Hello, everybody. Again, how are you?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
We got a fun one today. I'm sure everybody's just dying to talk about this topic.
Yeah.
We are going to be going into the magical R, the most hated word, the R word, and that's racism. This is a very, very touchy subject. We're going to go into it very gently and humbly, respectfully. I guess the reason why we're doing this is because obviously
hearing about it.
Well, that, our faith, our love for God wants to show the love for others, regardless of background, creed, race, whatever. We see that there's problems in the country. We see the tension between different groups. And we also don't believe everything the media is telling us. So
right.
Just a little disclosure. People of other races, we love you very much. You're made in the image of God, as well as us. We feel as though sometimes our voice isn't heard.
The white people's voice.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. But going into this, we're gonna touch on some touchy stuff, and we're gonna do it humbly and kind of put everything into perspective to demonstrate how this is a wicked and demonic force behind people that totally go against Galatians 3:28, that we believe, there's neither Jew nor Greek, nor free, no free nor slave, no male, no female, for we're all one in Christ. We believe that wholeheartedly. It's Christ on the cross who died for our sins is what makes us righteous. We recognize the history of this country, and we're not, we don't need to hide it. We do need to learn from it. Because it's part of American history. It's very important to know where we came from and how this country was built, and the things that Black people had to endure, the things that, between the multicultural societies going on, and how that developed and how we see people today. So let's go into it. If you wanted to have a quick introduction and maybe say your piece, we can get into some detailed stuff.
First, I want to say something about my hair. I forgot to say something. I've been a blonde for a long time now. Got tired of it, so now I'm a redhead. So
I like it.
I like it a lot. So if our viewers really care, what I'm saying?
I know.
But anyway, so yeah, I think we should maybe play that clip of that Black brother talking, because I think he makes some great points, don't you?
I think he does, because I think collectively, not all Black people think the same. Not all white people think the same. It's right. It's the dividing is what people need to be diligent about, and say, look, there's maybe something going on that's really trying to divide us for some reason. People are speaking out in all groups. You're gonna say something.
I was just gonna say, whenever there's injustice, inequality, whatever, we should always speak up against that. However, we don't need to be violent about it. I admire Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., how he went about his protests. And I really think lasting change happened there. I think the way that protests are being now, they're violent and they're destructive, and changes are happening, but I feel like there must be changes are kind of being bullied into happening, and I don't think that's going to last.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of history when, it's like a relationship. You can't just say this person's wrong and that person's wrong. Well, I mean, there's a lot of wrong that's been done from colonizers and stuff. But when we pin that on modern day white people, and we pin a certain stereotype on modern day Black people, it's just right. It's just,
it doesn't help anything.
It doesn't help anything. And I think the main point is the dialogue, the conversation between these groups. A lot of people it's the misunderstanding of these groups, and saying, look, we need to hear your side. So that's all we're doing. We're starting a dialogue, but let's let this gentleman speak. And this is his piece.
To the liberal mob of America, Thomas Sowell said, racism is not dead, but it is on life support, kept alive by politicians, race hustlers, and people who get a sense of superiority by denouncing others as racists. Thomas Sowell is talking about you. You spent the last several years terrorizing law-abiding citizens under the guise of social justice. You chanted the names of criminals and treated them like saints. And just as one chapter of your nefarious tale comes to an end, you hastily shift to the next excuse to continue your Pavlovian charade. You threaten those who protect you and shout about accountability, but you never want to hold yourselves accountable. And your friends in the media and pop culture give you the microphone. You grovel to celebrities who don't give a damn about you, all while failing to realize that many of those celebrities you adore are themselves living proof that minority oppression is a lie. You question the use of force by police, even though it was your own precious Barack Obama in 2008 who said, "If they bring a knife to the fight, we bring a gun." So today I'm going to hold you accountable myself. I'm going to hold the mirror up and show you your own flaws in excruciating detail. And you're going to sit there and listen for once in your perpetually embittered lives. Today you riot over a girl who was shot and killed by the police while trying to stab another black girl. And tomorrow it'll be someone else as you frantically browse police reports to fabricate your next source of outrage. No matter how loudly you shout about racism and move the goalposts of racial unity ever backwards, you can never drown out the truth that is right in front of you. You've silenced so many white voices and denied them the opportunity to speak, all while demanding that black voices be amplified. So listen up and amplify mine. According to the Washington Post database, which has tracked every known police shooting in America since 2015, as of April 2021, over the last 6 years, police have shot and killed 6,211 people. 46%, or 2,883 of them were white, and 24%, or 1,496 were black. Only 6% of all 6,211 people were unarmed. And only 2% of all people shot and killed by the police over the last 6 years were unarmed and black. To be specific, police officers have actually killed 33 more unarmed white people than black people over the last 6 years. According to the most recent and complete data from the FBI, 88.6% of black Americans are killed by other black Americans, the highest percentage for any ethnic group, despite the fact that black people are only roughly 13% of the population, according to the US Census Bureau. That same 13% accounted for 51% of all murder and non-negligent manslaughter arrests, 53% of all robbery arrests, and 36% of all violent crime arrests. White people are 76% of the population. That 76% only accounts for 46% of all murder and non-negligent manslaughter arrests, 45% of all robbery arrests, and 59% of all violent crime arrests. In 2019, the FBI estimated that police made a total of 10,085,207 arrests. In that year, police shot and killed 999 people. That's 0.0099%. But police are targeting black people, right? According to the DEA Intelligence Report 2020, Mexican transnational criminal organizations, including the Sinaloa and New Generation Jalisco cartels, are increasingly producing wholesale quantities of illicit fentanyl pills and smuggling them into the United States, smuggling them right into our country over our porous southern border. But building a wall is racist, right? The black dealer who sold drugs, including fentanyl, to George Floyd refused to testify because he might incriminate himself. But Black Lives Matter, right? The justice system you rail against every waking moment just gave you the outcome you wanted. No, demanded. The system is racist, right? Ma'Khia Bryant got into a fight with her foster sisters over cleaning the house and was shot and killed by a police officer trying to save other black people from being stabbed by her. He quite possibly saved other black lives that day. And you hate him for taking action and protecting them when their black lives were in danger. But Black Lives Matter, right? You follow in the footsteps of uninformed basketball players and rush to social media to post virtue signaling statuses, complaining about racism and discrimination on cell phones powered by lithium batteries made with cobalt mined by African children as young as 7 years old in the most deplorable and dangerous conditions. But Black Lives Matter, right? No. You care about George Floyd in Minneapolis, Ma'Khia Bryant in Columbus, and Sean Reed in Indianapolis, and only a handful of other names. You all showed up for them. But if Black Lives Matter so much to you, where were you on April 19th when 13-year-old Janiah Tate fatally stabbed 13-year-old Nyara Gibbons in Cincinnati? If Black Lives Matter so much to you, where were you on April 18th when 7-year-old Jocelyn Adams was shot and killed in a gang-related shooting while sitting in the McDonald's drive-thru with her father in Chicago? If Black Lives Matter so much to you, where were you on April 17th when 8-year-old J. Love Smith was beaten to death in Fresno, California by his 2 black legal guardians? If Black Lives Matter so much to you, where were you on April 6th when, also in Chicago, 22-month-old Caden Swan was shot in the head by 25-year-old DeAndre Binion? April 14th, 2021, Brian Henderson Jr., 12 years old, shot and killed in the car he was riding in Leavenworth, Kansas. April 14th, 2021, Dexter Ferguson, 7 years old, shot and killed in his bed when someone shot into his apartment in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. April 12th, 2021, Jamela Marlowe, 3 years old, shot and killed in a parking lot in Nashville, Tennessee. April 11th, 2021, Dior Harris, 11 months old, shot and killed when someone shot into the car she was riding in Syracuse, New York. April 10th, 2021, Rondell Jones, 3 years old, shot and killed when someone shot into the car he was riding in Hartford, Connecticut. March 26, 2021, Harley Seelens, 11 years old, shot and killed while riding his scooter in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. March 22nd, 2021, Tracy Bryant, 8 years old, shot and killed when someone shot into the car she was riding in Houma, Louisiana. March 13th, 2021, Jalea Hughes, 10 years old, shot and killed when someone opened fire in a public park in Little Rock, Arkansas. March 7th, 2021, Keon Green, 9 years old, shot and killed when someone shot into the car he was riding in St. Louis, Missouri. March 1st, 2021, Neandria Dyer, 11 years old, shot and killed while caught in the crossfire between two gunmen at a gas station in Chicago, Illinois. February 13th, 2021, Davion Tarver, 4 years old, shot and killed in his bed when someone shot into his apartment in Tuskegee, Alabama. February 4th, 2021, Major Turner, 2 years old, shot and killed when someone shot into his apartment in Birmingham, Alabama. February 2nd, 2021, Lorea Hall, 9 years old, shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. January 24th, 2021, Demaya Rankin Fleming, 7 years old, shot and killed while sitting in a car with her dad in St. Louis, Missouri. And January 6th, 2021, Cassidy Saunders, 6 years old, shot and killed in a drive-by shooting at a birthday party in Miami, Florida. Where were you for any of them? I know exactly where you were.
Thank you.
Rioting, looting, and terrorizing the world while chanting the same few names you've been programmed to care about. And doing it all with the blessing of Maxine Waters and her leftist cohorts. Most recently, over a man posed as a water company employee to rob a pregnant woman and put a gun to her belly in 2007 in Houston, Texas. Yeah, that George Floyd. Criminals who get shot by police do not deserve to be idolized or regarded as kings and queens by the general public. But you and the liberal mob keep whipping black people into a frenzy, using them as expendable human shields behind whom to advance your agenda. Because deep down, that's all you think we're good for anyway. Black people, by far, are the ones who've been most brainwashed by your ideology over the last 40 years. You don't see any other racial group rioting and looting when one of their own is shot and or killed, either by the police or by a person of another ethnicity. Oh, you don't think it happens? Tell that to the white family of Texas State Trooper Chad Walker. On March 26, 2021, he responded to a motorist assist call outside of Mejia, Texas, and was immediately shot several times by D. Arthur Pinson, the black man in the disabled vehicle. Chad Walker died from his injuries several days later, after donating his organs so he could help people even in death. Chad is survived by his wife, a 15-year-old son, twin 7-year-old daughters, and a 2-month-old daughter. How many white people rioted and looted in response to his death? Zero. Tell it to the white family of 1-year-old Aaron DeHart in El Paso, Texas. On April 13th, 2021, Aaron accidentally ripped a pillow. At one point, the babysitter, 24-year-old black man Marvin Lake, flew into a rage and used wrestling-style moves on the baby, which resulted in a hemorrhaged lung, brain damage, a fractured skull, and ultimately death. How many white people rioted and looted in response to Aaron's death? Zero. Tell it to the white family of Dr. Robert Leslie. On April 7th, 2021, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, former NFL player Philip Adams, a black man, entered Dr. Leslie's home and shot him, his wife Barbara, their 2 grandchildren, and a worker at the home named James Lewis. How many white people rioted and looted in response to their deaths? Zero. And tell it to the white family of 32-year-old Tony Tempa in Dallas, Texas, an actual victim of police brutality. On August 10th, 2016, Tony called the 911 operator and told her he was having a lot of anxiety and that he suffered from a severe mental illness. When the officers arrived, Tony was cuffed, flipped on his stomach, and 2 officers kneeled on his neck for 13 minutes. Tony died as a result, and the officers went on to joke about his mental illness as he lay dead on the ground at their feet. And how many white people rioted and looted in response to his death? Again, zero. The actions of police officers matter, but your reaction matters too. In all the incidents I just mentioned, if the races had been reversed, the entire world would be on fire right now, and you know it. But you ignore these real tragedies and these real instances of police brutality because you're waiting to be told whose life matters more by your mainstream media overlords. Because to them, and evidently to you, black criminals shot by the police are more important and more valuable. And honestly, you're right, but not in the way you would think. George Floyd and many other black miscreants are worth more to you dead than they ever could have been alive. Because it is only their deaths on which you can build your new regime of domestic terror. Nancy Pelosi thanked George Floyd for his sacrifice, as if he knew he would become a martyr for taking illicit drugs and trying to use counterfeit money in Minneapolis last year. You demand accountability for the police, white people, for every action, but you never hold the actual perpetrators of the crime themselves accountable. Instead, you and the liberal mob make excuses for the actions of criminals, conveniently ignoring the fact that it was their own poor choices that led to their involvement with police in the first place. Being black does not give you a free pass to do whatever you want and break whatever laws you please without consequence. You worship Democrat politicians who keep minorities in a state of perpetual disadvantage so that they can sick them like attack dogs on anyone who dares to disagree with your false narrative. While pretending to move race relations forward, you've actually set them back by decades. You talk about dismantling white supremacy without realizing your actions are quite literally creating a whole new generation of white people who might be tempted to look upon black people with scorn and contempt because of the way you have trained black people to act. You have conditioned black people to act like subhuman creatures at the slightest provocation. You are the slave masters of the 21st century. And you hunt those of us who escape from your control and flog us with your racist invective. But the lashes don't sting for us anymore because we're free in body and in mind. And that's what enrages you most of all. And so you continue, growing ever more unhinged, feverish, and nonsensical. Going so far as to now say that knife fights are part of black culture. Well, you know what else is a part of black culture? Selling our own people into slavery. But you wouldn't know anything about that because the only history you know comes from the 1619 Project. Some white people in the past did sell black people into slavery. And now you sell us metaphorically into ideological chains after auctioning us off to the highest bidder at the mainstream media auction block. You haven't changed a bit. You say you want to defund or abolish the police. But what good will come from defunding the police if your viciousness towards them has made them so pusillanimous that they won't even do the job anymore? More funding means more training. More training means better practices. Better practices means better outcomes, which is what you claim to want in the first place. You'd rather defund the police altogether. Police like the officer who was shot at point blank range in California and was still able to call for help and apply a tourniquet to her wounded colleague. All because you take your orders from an athlete who had to be carried off of the court during an NBA Finals game with a leg cramp, crying all the way. The fact of the matter is, if real justice is what you truly desire, then it must be blind and impartial. If you have to terrorize the entire country for a year, throw pig's blood on the homes of your adversaries, threaten to incite a riot if you don't get the outcome you want, and rapidly harass anyone who disagrees with your presumptive conclusions for the rest of their lives, that's not justice. That's mob rule. Lady Justice is blindfolded because color shouldn't tip her scales. The consequences of crime should be colorblind. And the scales of justice can never be truly balanced if you weight one side with hatred and intimidation. The more you cry wolf, the less seriously you will be taken in the future, because you have become the wolves yourselves. You don't even try to put on sheep's clothing anymore. You want us to see your teeth, and trust me, we see them. But lions are stronger than wolves, and we can show some teeth on us. So come and get some. Consider this a courtesy warning, because when you come for one of us, you come for all of us. And just remember, if you defund the police, there will be no one left to protect you from the rest of us. Lives matter. Actions matter too. And if you have to put a color in front of either of those statements, the only racist is you. I'm Nemani Felder, and that was absolutely nothing but common sense.
Okay. Can you hold on? Let me stop sharing.
Why'd you mute me?
I muted both of us. I muted both of us.
Bravo! I think he said it all.
That's yes. So here's my opinion. I let him say what he felt he needed to say. So
Coming from a black person.
right. I think that's respectful. Because I mean it is very touchy subject because I know that's why I'm just kind of like want to go into this because you know my wife is black, my daughter is black. I love them very much. It's a hard world we live in. We get with looks and stares from both ends. And but there's a lot of lies in the media, I think, from both sides. But Black Lives Matter is just not about black people. In my opinion, it's
Well, it almost seems like their real motto is only Black Lives Matter and only the ones we say matter.
yeah, because there are cases of there's always been a case of discrimination. I'm about to go into it. You know, they're you know after slavery, what was going on? Obviously, that's wrong.
Right.
But just to pick and choose what incidents matter, and it's just this narrative. A lot of people don't want to wake up and see, hey, they kind of got this narrative behind every single incident, and they're just putting it out in your face and saying, look, see, this is the problem. And then it brings tension at work, brings tension in your community, and it's just
But
it's nasty stuff.
here's the bottom line. We all need to educate ourselves instead of just assuming whatever we hear in the news or read in the news is the gospel truth.
Right. Yeah, that's
when are we going to come to the realization that our media is not always telling the truth?
That's hard to deal with. Yeah, it's true.
It's reality. It's reality.
You want to look into certain incidents like, wait, I mean, you know, there's I think there was a crime. Some guy was shot in the chest like 4 times, white guy. Okay. and the cop was Hispanic, but the guy was reaching for the cop's gun, reaching for the cop's gun, fighting with him. The cop had to do what he had to do.
Right.
If they were to push the narrative and say, look, say it's on the other shoe, and they say, hey, look, this racist cop came and killed this guy because they gave you that little clip that you see, oh, this is an outrage, we go and research what actually happened. This guy was reaching for his gun, trying to kill the police officer. He wants to go home and see his children. Police officer, he's has a hard job, and I do realize that. And there's racist cops.
And the story that this brother just talked about, where the white man had the cop with his knee on his neck and died. I didn't hear anything about that in the news.
Right. And I think both that and the George Floyd incident is just inhumane, obviously.
Well, here's the thing, my little research, that actually was in a police approved training, was a knee on the neck. I think now they've changed that.
Right.
But am I saying I agree with
it was,
that being
yes.
used?
I did read that.
Yeah. I don't agree with it, but I'm just saying that I don't think that, what was his name? Derek Chauvin. I don't think he purposely showed up just to kill George Floyd. I don't think that. Do I think he was reckless? Absolutely.
Yes, he had carelessness, and it can easily be taken for racism.
Years? No, I don't think he deserved 22 years.
Can it easily be? I do, my opinion. He had no regret. He was on his neck for 9 minutes. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The guy couldn't breathe. This is 4 minutes after this happened, and the guy's still on his neck.
But when he was in the back of the police car, he began to say back then he couldn't breathe.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying the guy really couldn't breathe. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we just got to look at everything. And just so our viewers know, tonight, me and my son strongly disagree with some things, but we're not disrespectful. We don't think the other person's stupid. I think we're a prime example of you can disagree in a healthy way, and you might learn something from each other.
Very hard situation. This is what makes it touchy. You want to hear the other side, and you have so much emotion attached to it. Right. And then you give the history of Black people in this country. Yes, they have been disenfranchised. They've been treated for the longest time. We get to, Jim Crow, civil rights, they're still being treated horribly. And, yes, there are aspects in today's society where you do see prejudices and stuff, but I think my personal opinion is the whole thing I'm trying to demonstrate today is that other races have come together more than they have been separated and been, divided, in my opinion, because every single person in my walk of life, of every nationality, race, color, creed, has been nothing but loving towards me, and I have been loving towards them. So when I see this stuff on the news and say, oh, all this is going on, I don't see this in my community. My wife, we don't have this. Her family, my family, we just don't see this, and we're kind of questioning. That's why it doesn't make sense how the news is just this is what the world is like. This is what's going on. I don't see that.
They try to make it seem like this is the truth. Well, and your nephews, my grandsons, are mixed. And I've told them, when they were younger too, that look, our country has a history I'm ashamed of. White people did treat Black people pretty bad, and it's disgusting to me. They were treated less than a person. And it's like, how can that even happen? You know what I mean? I find that just repulsive. So I will never, I'll never whitewash our past history, because I think it was just important.
Can I do a little bit of that till we can kind of get a glimpse of what was going on in the early
I think that's a good
1800s
idea.
just to see, I mean, it's not like it's hidden or nothing. This is worldwide, but I think that's important to see what the Black community was like, post emancipation, how they went into the Reconstruction, how we have the KKK and all that. I won't go into all that, but it's the Reconstruction is and you can find this. I'll probably put this link to this website in the description. It is I think khanacademy.org /humanities, US history, Civil War, stuff like that. You can just pull it up. But it says during the Reconstruction, during the period of Reconstruction, which lasted from 1865 to 1877, Congress passed and enforced laws that promoted civil and political rights for African Americans across the South. Most notable among the laws Congress passed were the 3 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the 13th Amendment, of course, 1865, which ended slavery, the 14th Amendment in 1868, which guaranteed African Americans the right of American citizenship, and the 15th Amendment in 1870 that guaranteed Black men the constitutional right to vote. African Americans actively took up the rights, opportunities, and responsibilities of citizenship. During Reconstruction, 700 African men served in elected public office, among them 2 United States senators and 14 members of the United States House of Representatives. Another 1,300 African Americans, men and women, held appointed government jobs led by Republicans in Congress. The federal government insisted on civil and political rights for African Americans in the face of fierce resistance by Southern whites. Federal military occupation of the defeated Confederacy ensured African Americans civil and political rights. So this is where it messed up. And this is what I'm against. And this is, we do have this mentality in one form or another among my people. So
Yeah.
that I'm talking to the Black community, I'm also talking to the white community, because there are hateful people out there.
Yeah.
Right. So
Both sides need to work on things. Absolutely. I
yes.
agree.
I think talking about it in this day and age, to not talk about it is not building bridges. You're not building relationships. You're not saying this is your side of the fence. Wow, I just never realized that. And then to completely divide and say we're better with our own, it's you know, a tool of the devil, honestly. But listen to this. So from the late 1860s, white supremacists in the KKK terrorized African American leaders and citizens in the South until 1871. The U.S. Congress passed legislation that resulted in the arrest and imprisonment of Klan leaders and the end of the Klan's terrorism of America for a time. But over the course of the late 1860s and throughout the 1870s, the federal government's military presence was withdrawn from various southern states. And with the Compromise of 1877, President Rutherford B. Hayes ordered the last federal troops in the South to withdraw. So he has his, you know, they have their troop, the Republican Party in the South, trying to reconstruct the South, bring equality. You know, there was real estate involved. Obviously, the cotton industry was still like booming and stuff. So, with no troops to enforce the 14th and 15th Amendments, Reconstruction was at an end. Across the South, lynching, disenfranchisement, and segregationist laws proliferated. It would not be until after the Second World War and the 1960s civil rights movement that Jim Crow segregation would be outlawed. So we go from 1877 to 1960. It's a long time to be going through.
Right. All that nonsense.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. But what was going on? So family, church, school became centers of Black life after slavery. With slavery's end, Black women often preferred to be homemakers though poverty pushed many back into the workforce. Black churches became centerpieces of African American culture and community, not only as places of personal spiritual renewal and communal worship, but also as centers for learning, socializing, and political organization. Black ministers were community leaders. African Americans' desire for education found expression in the establishment of schools of every level, from grad schools for basic education to the founding of the nation's first Black colleges, such as Fisk University and Howard University. The Freedmen's Bureau of 1865 to 1870, a government agency established to aid former slaves, oversaw some 3,000 schools across the South and ran hospitals and healthcare facilities for the freedmen. So they were a tightly knit community. They were, you know, they loved God, they loved family, they were building, they were, you know, establishing, and I think that's just an amazing thing to come out of that. You know, your ancestors come from that and you still hold great moral values.
But it, like you said, it was a long time till things turned around for them.
Very long time. That's
right?
That's the sad part.
Yeah.
So I found this today. The Klan maintained its control since many witnesses were terrified to testify against a Klansman, fearing violent reprisal. So we had they called them what do they call them? I forgot the nicknames they had. The carpetbaggers.
I know what I could call them.
Scallywags.
No, I was thinking of something that starts with a
Right.
D, but I won't
But
say it.
so they primarily performed heinous crimes against African Americans. We all know that, especially those running for office in the South. So in addition, many white Republicans and sympathizers were also targets of Klan violence. It is estimated that the KKK performed over 3,500 racially motivated lynchings in the South between 1865 and 1900. Furthermore, white
God.
Republicans who sympathized with African Americans,
They were killed too.
yeah, they described them as carpetbaggers and scallywags. They were frequently attacked. Democrats.
Oh, what? I
Could
thought
not
they were all about
achieve.
Black people.
Well, if Democrats could not achieve desired results using sheer violence, the Klan oftentimes voted for literacy tests and conducted voter fraud to dilute the Black vote. This happened most frequently in districts composed of nearly equal numbers of African American and white voters, where the Klan felt they must assert control over the Reconstructionist, more progressive racial systems. The Klan also worked to restrict Black economic empowerment. Any white people who encouraged Black economy autonomy, like merchants who purchased cotton from Black farmers, who were also threatened, beaten, and killed. The Klan disassembled the African American and Republican community organizing initiative by terrorizing Black churches, as well as many schools established by the Freedmen Bureau. You know, who actually went against them, who was a strong force, was Ulysses Grant. He's on your $50 bill. He was a strong advocate for the Reconstruction against the.
And what color was he?
Yes, I know.
What color was he?
I know, but here's the thing.
Maybe our viewers don't know.
Ulysses Grant's on the $50 bill. Yes, he's white, man.
He's white. Yeah.
But yes, there was a lot of good white people.
The point is, there's good white people.
Yes.
There's bad white people. There's good Black people. There's bad Black people. That's just the bottom line, you know.
I have a article by this gentleman. He wants to go against the basically he's got a couple stats for me. I don't know if it's getting too long on my part, but I'm gonna give you a couple stats, then I'll probably let you take over.
Okay.
I forgot his name. He's what's his little pages from the Theodo.com narratives, police brutality. Police brutality is the myth. He is saying right here, I, a Black man, will go through the facts to prove that a systemic problem of police brutality on Black people is not only untrue, but tremendously detrimental to all who foolishly believe it. The narrative regarding the prevalence of police brutality against Black men in the U.S. is largely perpetrated by the media and race hustlers like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson in an effort to keep Blacks down.
Right.
The only reason liberal Democrat politicians are allowing the looting that we're witnessing in 2020 is because of the soft bigotry of low expectations, which says Blacks are not to be held to the basic standards of civil society. Lesser, inferior, impulsive, rogue, feral, super predators to be healed, as Hillary said. If whites held Blacks to the same standard as they do the rest of the society, crime would plummet, Black wages would rise, and Blacks would be able to fully function and participate, not just spectate in the greatest nation God has ever created. A Harvard study showed that Black men and women are treated differently in the hands of law enforcement. They are more likely to be touched, handcuffed, pushed to the ground, and pepper sprayed by the police officer. All occur probably at a higher frequency among Black because they resist arrest at a higher rate than others. But the study had oddly surprising findings when it came to police shootings using lethal force. It is the most surprising result of my career. He goes on and on with, 14 last year, 14 unarmed Black men out of the population of more than 20 million were killed by police. The year before, the number was 36. These figures are likely close to the number of Black men struck by lightning in a given year, considering that happens to about 300 Americans annually, and Black men are 7% of the population. And they included cases where the shooting was justified, even if the person killed was unarmed. Of course, police killings are not the result of a force of nature, and I'm not claiming these are morally equivalent. The comparison illustrates that these killings are incredibly rare and that it's completely misleading to talk about an epidemic of them.
Kind of like the COVID. It's not a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's a scamdemic.
It's we see a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of cases that you can Google. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. He was shot and killed by police, white kid, whatever. He wasn't even running. He was unarmed. It happens all the time, but
Right.
it's these cops. I do agree that okay, what can we change for the police? I think it was Dwayne White or Dante Wright. She pulled out her gun. This is what kind of upset me. He gets out of the car. He wants to get back in the car and run. She reaches for her gun. She's been on the force for 20 years. She knows her gun's on her right side. Stuff like that. We hold police accountable for certain things like that. And the whole excuse was, oh, it was an accident. And she knew. If you're on the force for 22 years and you don't know that your primary weapon is on your primary hand and your taser's on the secondary hand, you know what I mean? Stuff like that is what upsets me. I think upsets people.
I might have to disagree with you, because there's actually been several cases where in the heat of the moment, the cops just thinking of, oh my God, I mean, their adrenaline's up just like the perpetrator, and they did reach for the wrong thing. I'm not saying it happened every time, but I think it's possible in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's
not
possible.
always. Yeah,
it's possible. And there was 3 other officers there. He was by himself. If he were to take off, they would pursue him, whatever. She was let go. It's the stuff like that you read all the time. Okay. It just adds fuel to the fire on both sides, but
right. I think
it's a very sad
definitely
thing.
accountability and better training. I agree with that. And I also think that policemen should have some kind of psychological training, because when you're dealing with someone that maybe has a mental illness, or if they're on drugs, then of course their mind's all cuckoo.
So you have to handle them differently.
Come at to that person in a whole different way. So I'm all for better training for our policemen. I think that's a given, absolutely.
And I think I need to ask the question that everybody wants to hear from 2 white people. Are there racist cops out there?
Of course there are. Duh. But there's white racist cops and there's black racist cops. We don't talk about that. We just assume any racist cop is white. That's not true.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know.
So, the bottom line is there's good and bad people in every walk of life and every race, period. But if we're going to start just stereotyping all cops, black people.
That's the hard part. Yes,
And then what does that do? That causes our public, our society to start going, the policemen, they're our enemy. And what has happened? Innocent policemen are getting killed, because now our society is like, oh my God, we better get them before they get us,
It's just sad. It's just very sad situation.
So are you done with your piece?
Yeah, I'm gonna step in every now and then.
Okay.
Probably give my 2 cents, but I just basically wanted to give an idea of, we knew it was bad, but I wanted to show that even after slavery ended, there was another 100 years of being lynched and being persecuted, killed. And me personally, I don't see why there is such an issue with people wanting to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. I think we should, because it celebrates them being, that's the day that that they were told that they were free. I don't see why that's part of American history. I mean, why not make that a federal holiday? I think that's,
okay,
I have no problem with it.
I'll trade you that if we can get rid of Pride Month. We don't
I
need
would
a freaking
totally get rid of Pride Month. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, so here's
Pride Month.
where
I'm gonna go on mute, Kay. Let you have the.
No, don't go on mute, because I want you to interject with me.
Okay.
Because this is something that we strongly disagree with.
Okay.
We had this conversation last night.
Yes.
I personally think that football player Colin Kaepernick is to be blamed for a lot of this racism towards the police. Okay. And so here's my take on Colin. Colin has every right to speak against whatever he wants to speak against. He has every right to kneel. But I don't think it's helped anything. Why did he have to use that platform? Why did he have to kneel when the national anthem's playing? Because the national anthem represents our thankfulness for being a free country and thanking the people who gave their lives so we could have a free country. So to me, I think it's disrespectful. I'm sorry. I think there's other avenues he could have taken to protest police brutality. Okay. But here's where I'm going to kind of come at Colin a little bit, because Colin said the reason why he was taking a knee was because police were targeting Black people and killing them unjustly. So he gave some names, and I'm going to go through those names now. Okay. So the first one is a young Black man. These are all, Black suspects. Oscar Grant. Okay, let me give you the history in Oscar Grant. So let me get my spectacles because I'm old and blind. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to give the facts, and then the viewers can, make up their own minds. Okay. So he was shot and killed by police in 2009. Okay. What happened was police received a call that there was some kind of fight on a bus. Okay. I can't remember if I wrote down where this was at. I didn't. I'm sorry. Okay. So when the police arrived, they found out that this Grant guy was involved with the fight. Okay. So of course they're separating everybody. They're questioning, the people like they usually do, right?
Yeah.
So Grant was lying down, face down in the train. The cop had him down on the platform, right? Then the officer drew his pistol and shot Grant. Not sure why that happened. Okay. Grant was rushed to the hospital, but he died. Okay. The officer, here's one of those instances. The officer claimed he meant to grab his taser, and he did grab his gun. So there's an instant. Okay. The officer was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and served 2 years. Okay. In the trial, Grant's criminal record was allowed. Now, you and I talked about this too, that I think it's important when cops get these calls, they do need to know a criminal record, because we need to see what kind of character this person might have, and could they be a threat? Okay. So when his criminal record was allowed in the trial, they found out that in 2006, Grant was trying to get apprehended by a cop. He ran away from him. Okay. And the cops had to tase him and kick him because he refused to put his hands behind his back. The night at the train station, Grant resisted being handcuffed and was moving one arm towards the waistband of his pants, where more than likely he had a gun.
Okay.
The officer's defense attorney explained that Grant is the sort of person, or had the sort of character, that would lead him to resist arrest. So there's one example there. We've got a man who has a record of resisting arrest. Cops shot and killed him. Was it justifiable? I wasn't there.
Right.
But all I know, more than likely he was resisting. Okay. Now, when the cop said, I wrongly grabbed my gun instead of my taser. Just saying what the cop said. Okay. Yeah. So now the next person that Kaepernick named was, I think if you say this name, Rekia Boyd, I could be wrong. Okay.
I don't know.
In March 2012, Officer Dante Servin, he was off duty during the time, he asked a group of people to hold their noise down. He was driving by in his car, dressed in his plain clothes because he was off duty, right? But one man got mad at him and started charging this cop's car. And the cop said he had a gun. So the cop shot his weapon out the window as he's driving by. Well, the shot hit this man in the hand, this guy that was coming toward the cop, and then it went and shot an innocent bystander, which was Rekia Boyd. And she ended up dying. To me, that's not a case of police brutality, yet that's one person that Kaepernick named. That's example 2. Okay. Here's the third one. We all know about this one, Michael Brown. August 9th, 2014. Michael Brown, 18, shot and killed by police. He was with a friend, and the police got a call that Brown had just robbed a store. Are you listening?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. All right. I'm that type of person. I have to look at you if I'm listening. I can't do.
Well, you're
two
not really
things
looking
once.
at me. You're looking at me on the screen. We don't have eye contact.
I'm looking at you. Look at my eyes. See? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm just messing with you. But
That must
anyway,
have-
they got a call that he robbed the store. Okay.
right.
So the cops see Michael Brown and his friend walking down the street.
Mhm.
And the cop was like, hey, dude, I want to talk to you, right? We got
Yeah.
a call that you, right? Well, Michael Brown came up to the cop and was trying to take the gun out of his hand.
Mhm.
The officer started firing and Michael Brown was shot several times and was killed.
Right.
Okay. But his friend was saying, oh no, he was running away from the cops. He was trying to, he had his hands up and everything, but all of those shots were in the front of Michael Brown's body.
Mhm.
So, okay.
Ugh.
Next one. This
sad.
one is sad to me. This was an innocent one.
Mhm.
Tamar Rice, the 12-year-old boy who was at the park in Cleveland, Ohio, playing with a toy gun.
Mhm.
Now, the sad part of this call is when a person called the police to say, listen, this is what they said. There's someone at the park with a gun, but I think it's a juvenile, a kid.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a toy gun.
I remember. Yeah, I read about that one.
This information was not relayed to the officers that answered that call.
Yeah, I read about that. That's
And what happened? The cop shows up almost immediately, shoots the kid, and kills him.
Ridiculous.
I totally disagree with that. However,
Mhm.
if the cops were told this might be a toy, that could have been useful, because I'm sure they pulled up and thinking this kid has a real gun.
I think the example is it's every case is different. Every incident is different.
It is,
They're not
but
all the same.
that talks about, again, the kind of training we need within the police department. That person that answered that 911 call should have told the police that.
Yeah.
Look, it's a kid with a toy, we think.
They should have known. They should know that kind of information. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So the next one that Colin Kaepernick named was Laquan McDonald. October 20, 2014. Officer Jason Van Dyke shot him 16 times. Now that seems extreme. I agree, but let's see what happened, okay? The police involved said McDonald was behaving erratically while walking down a street and refusing to put down a knife he was carrying. When dash cam video was shown, it showed that McDonald had been walking away from the police when he was shot. Okay, all right. Officer Van Dyke was found guilty of second-degree murder. But the initial call they received was that there was a person, later identified as this young man, Laquan, who was breaking into trucks. Okay. Witnesses say they saw McDonald confront him, and McDonald swung the knife at them, and they called 911. Then these officers show up. So here the officers saying, okay, we got some dude with a knife, and he's violent and he's dangerous. Okay, that's already in their mindset. Okay, right? All right. So the officers show up, and two other officers were already there before Van Dyke and his partner. Okay. So when they get there, McDonald, they're telling McDonald, no, drop your knife, dude, drop your knife. So McDonald takes his knife, punctures the tire of the officer's car, and hits the windshield with his knife. Other words, he ain't playing. This is a dangerous, out of control person. Right. Okay. So Van Dyke and a fellow officer spot McDonald and exit their vehicle and walk towards McDonald. McDonald sees them, moves his hand behind his waist. Again, looks like he's grabbing for a gun. Officers see the knife in his hand. Van Dyke and his partner, Officer Walsh, have guns drawn on McDonald.
Okay.
McDonald, he gets shot once. McDonald falls to the ground. Van Dyke moves towards McDonald, continuing to fire his gun. Another officer approaches McDonald and kicks the knife from his hand. Still in his hand, McDonald does not move. After his death, the toxicology report showed McDonald had PCP in his system. So, acting erratically, he's dangerous.
Superhuman strength is what PCP does to you. You can get shot and not feel it. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, that's another one that Colin said was an innocent man that the police targeted. Next one, Sandra Bland. In 2015, Officer Brian T. Insignia. Now this one was interesting. I haven't heard of this one. She was driving her car and she was pulled over by that Texas State Trooper I just named.
Okay.
He accused her of failing to signal a lane change. Okay. So the exchange between them became angry. She's like, why are you pulling me over? What's going on? Right. So the officer pulls out his stun gun and says, get out of the car or I'm going to light you up. Okay. Wrong on his part. Right. What's that saying? Right. So she pulls out her cell phone and begins to record this exchange. It's only 39 seconds, but you can actually see it. I watched it. Okay. So she ends up getting taken into custody, and 3 days later, she was found hanging dead in her jail cell. And all her family said there's no way she would have killed herself. She was starting a new career. I mean, this was a smart, put together Black woman. She was not some, prostitute, or she was just, a smart young woman, right? So this is what the officer said. And again, we're talking about white officers, okay? He said, I was fearing for my life when I pulled her over. But if you look at the video, there's no reason for him to be fearful. So he's a moron, right? So, he was very angry, right? So he was only indicted on perjury. And so that case, I think completely wrong. Did he cause her to kill herself? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
But it seems very iffy. So that example, something's not right there. Okay. Next, we have Freddie Gray. April 12th, 2015. He's arrested by Baltimore police because he had possession of a knife. Okay. Now this one I found very disturbing. And I do think these cops were absolutely guilty of harming and killing this man. And there was a Black police officer, a female, that was involved with this, right? Okay, so he was being transported in a police van where he sustained such severe injuries that his spinal cord was severely
I read about that. Yeah, he was
jacked.
handcuffed.
Okay,
Handcuffed in the back. Yeah, I remember that.
So there was 6 officers involved. They were all acquitted, which I don't agree with. Okay,
it's ridiculous.
The police, I saw the video. They had him on the ground, but when they lifted him, he could not get on his feet. So they were dragging him. I think you probably saw that, right? So this poor man's continuing to scream, oh my God, he's in serious pain, right? So, that's when I'm going to say the cops were absolutely wrong. What did they do to that poor man?
Yeah.
I think they had their knees on his back. Isn't that what happened, Jess? Yeah. Okay. But he was
handcuffed, put in the back seat of the car, and they were driving around. He was not buckled in, so he's flying all over.
He was in the back of the van. Yeah. That one, I'm going to agree with Colin on that one. Now, but this is the case. This next one, Mario Woods, is the case where Colin said, that's the case I decided I'm going to take a knee for.
Okay.
Mario Woods, December 2nd, 2015, San Francisco, California. 4 p.m., officers were dispatched to San Francisco General Hospital to take a report from a 26-year-old man who was slashed by another man, a Black man, who had a knife. Okay. The man said he was sitting in a parked car with his female friend when they saw a man walking back and forth, talking to himself crazy with a knife in his hand. Turned out to be Mario Woods. Okay. So this man, him and his friends see, and they're like, what's this dude all about? Right. Well, this dude comes up to the car. And so the guy is like, oh no. So he opens the door to, kind of push this guy away. And Mario takes his knife and slashes the guy's shoulder. That's why he ended up in the hospital. Okay. So that's the report that the cops get. They go get this, statement from this guy, and then they spot the guy, right? So he was, I think, getting ready to take a bus. Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, he was waiting to take a bus. The officers approach him, and that's when Woods grabbed that same knife out of his pocket and said to the cops, "You're not taking me today." Okay. So both officers drew their guns, told Woods, drop the knife. Woods replied, "You better squeeze that mother effer and kill me." Okay. Woods then takes off on foot with the officers in pursuit. The 2 cops called for backup, And when the other officers arrived, some had weapons that fired non-lethal beanbags filled with lead shot. Now maybe we need those, more of those, right?
Yeah.
So the first beanbag shot Woods, had no effect on him. Okay. 2 more rounds were shot. One hit him in the leg. He caused him to limp, but he's still walking around with the knife. Okay. So the next shot, they put this beanbag lead into a more powerful gun, shoot him, and he falls down, but he gets back up again with the knife in his hand. Pepper spray's used, no effect on him. And by this time, there's a big crowd watching all this go down, right? So the cops are like, get back to the crowd. They don't want anyone getting hurt. Wood starts charging towards the crowd. The cops again say, stop. He won't stop, and they began to shoot their weapons, and he got killed. Now, here's Woods had an extensive criminal record with armed robbery. Armed robbery is one of his, issues. And in his system, during the toxicology report, he had meth, and antidepressants in his system. So to me, that was the case that Collins said made him to decide to take a kneel. I'm sorry, but I think Mr. Woods was completely guilty, and I think the police used justifiable force with him. That's my opinion. Okay. So now we will end with Mr. Rockstar himself, George Floyd. Okay. Now, so I think a lot of us know the whole thing. He was trying to buy cigarettes with a counterfeit bill, $20 bill in that store. And the employee called the cops, say, look, we've got a dude here with a counterfeit bill. Well, when they arrive, Floyd is sitting in a parked car around the corner, and the cops are telling him to get out of the car. Okay. And when the employee made the call, he said, look, this guy's on something. He's drunk. He's not making sense. He's very unstable. Okay. We know later he was on fentanyl, I think. Yeah. And something else, right? Okay. So, and the police already know, I'm sure they already know. That's why they take people's driver's license and stuff like that to know their criminal record. That years ago, and I don't know how many years ago, but Floyd was found guilty of taking a gun to a pregnant woman's belly trying to rob her house.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. So
here's a man on drugs. He's dangerous. So again, I'm sure the cops are showing up with the mindset, we got a fight going down here. I'm sure of it. Okay. So anyway, they're trying to get him out. Floyd is resisting to being handcuffed. Yeah. And these 2 officers are taking care of him. It was a little later that Derek Chauvin showed up for backup. He was the backup. He wasn't the main cop. Okay. So Floyd began to apologize, and then he was cooperating, right? But when they tried to put him in the squad car, he began to struggle with them. Right. That's when Floyd starts saying, I'm claustrophobic and I can't breathe. He's saying that in the police car too. Okay. So anyway, so Officer Chauvin then pulled Floyd and caused him to fall to the ground. Floyd laid on the ground, face down in handcuffs. Now at that point, I'm going to have to agree. He's already subdued.
Yes.
He's subdued. So the knee in the neck, no, I don't agree. I don't think that needed to happen. Okay. So, and we know the rest of the story. Okay. Yes. But then after that, to protest, what happened? Black Lives Matter, burning and looting and destroying cities over this.
Yeah, we're repaying evil for evil. It was very, very heartbreaking. Yeah, I don't think any unarmed person should be killed by police. That's just how I feel. If they're unarmed, you can capacitate them. They have no weapon to attack you. You can tase them, you can pepper spray them. No person should die that's unarmed in the hands of the police.
and Floyd was unarmed.
Right. That's why I think.
But these other ones, I think all these people were armed except for that innocent girl and the little boy, the 12-year-old. So the bottom line is, and then we're going to have riots and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to make a mural and a statue out of this guy.
Right.
No. I don't agree with it.
But yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that either. There is, because I think the flip side is what people are upset about is we have, let's see here. I forgot his name. Let me give you the list of the names. Um,
So I read all those names to show why I don't agree with Colin's assessment that police are unjustly killing Black people.
right. What do you say to a white mass shooters who are taken into custody with care by the police? John Holmes, who massacred 12 people in Aurora Theater
Mhm.
in
Yeah, I
full
remember.
army fatigue and
Yeah.
SWAT gear, had weapons in the car, was taken into custody. So why
Yeah.
wasn't he tackled to the ground and had a knee on his neck?
Right. And I remember you and your wife were talking about that with me a few months ago, and I had to think, like, yeah, why is that?
That is a
What's that saying, right?
that's a very disturbing part of it.
And
You know,
as much as I know not all white people are racist
yeah.
or whatever, I will have to say this. What's up with you white boys being serial killers? All serial killers are white boys, aren't they?
That's true.
What's up with that?
But yeah, isn't that very interesting though? Because maybe there
Yeah.
is some kind of police favoritism. I think that needs to be reformed.
Well,
we had
maybe.
what's his name that went into the church and shut up the church in South Carolina. I think he was taken into
The
custody.
white guy.
These are all mass shooters.
Yeah.
Are white. Yeah.
Okay, but could it? Yeah, I think yes, we definitely need some reform there. But also, you brought some statistics earlier that most Black people resist arrest compared to white people. Could that have something to do with it as well?
That's a big factor.
Yeah.
Statistically, yes, speaking, but I mean, in cases like that, I mean, if we're going to take them individually, we have to take those individually. Even though the mass shooters, were you trying to say that the mass shooter's complying, so he's not resisting arrest? Is that like?
Well, I think he surrendered, didn't he? I mean, he wasn't coming at the police with his guns, was he? I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't think they were, but it just kind of makes it.
Well, I'm not
like
saying I agree that, but what I'm saying is that could be a factor that, yeah, this dude did something horrible, but then he surrendered.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are some mass shooters that are taken out. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for the most part, aren't they? Or they killed themselves.
That's the thing. That's the thing. You kill yourselves. But
yeah.
As far as like you said with Colin Kaepernick, you know, my personal opinion, and I don't like really. We just disagree. I think he lives in a free country. He's able to protest the flag. He as a symbol of oppression. You can agree with it or not. I mean, but it's like, don't be surprised people go against you because people have died for that flag. People's family members have died for that flag. But I get that he's exercising his right to do so. And I like, just like LeBron James saying when Ma'Khia Bryant was going after that girl and the officer shot and killed her, LeBron James says, you know, accountability, you're next. That was bad taste on his part. Bad taste on his part, but he still had that right to say that. Because it's a free country. Fine, you want to say it, but be prepared for the repercussions after that. You know what I mean?
It is, but my question to Colin is, why did he choose that particular way of protesting what he saw as police brutality? Because to me, he is insulting all the people that died to give us that flag.
He's basically saying,
couldn't he choose it? Couldn't he have chosen a different route? That's all I'm saying.
He says, I love and respect my teammates, and I stand right there with them in regard to fighting for racial equality and justice. But I also stand with my grandfathers who risked their lives for this country, countless other military men and women who do it on a daily basis. A woke mob descended on him and forced him to apologize. One teammate told him to shut the F up. So much for freedom of speech.
They said that to Colin?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, I mean, it's, to me, it's yes, it's bad taste. Okay. I don't agree with it. It's bad taste, but it's a peaceful protest. It's not, we're not looting. It's nothing to do with looting stores like George Floyd.
But this is another reason why I disagree with you about Colin. You said it's a peaceful thing he did by taking a knee, but what he did was he began to list people that he said the police unjustly killed. To me, that put a target on the backs of our police force.
Well, I think in some of the cases, he, you know, not all the cases that he was trying to defend with. Some of them, yeah, they were, you know, the 12-year-old boy. But compiling them all into one category, that's the problem. We want to say every
Yeah.
single thing that's happened, it's all because of racism. All those
Right.
cases you put out, they're not all the same. 12-year-old kid with
Right.
a cap gun got shot and
Right.
killed. That's wrong. It's not the
Absolutely.
same as being hopped up on PCP with a knife
Right.
fighting the cops and then putting them all together and saying, oh, this
Yeah.
is why I'm
And
protesting.
like I
This is not
said,
the same.
Tamar Rice, the 12-year-old, and Freddie Gray, the one who got his spine all jacked up. I agree. Those two were just jacked up, dude.
It's messed
I
up.
agree. But the other ones, I'm sorry, I see those as thugs.
But what I say to Colin, yeah, and there are white people that do the same thing, and they are taken into custody. They're shot and killed. I'm not defending them. I really defending a criminal just because of the color of their skin. But given the history, I understand the history. They feel majority of black people in this country do fear the police, and I have to comprehend that. I don't go through that. I don't drive down the street and there's a cop behind me and fear for my life and say there's a possibility that I could die. I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And I respect, even though I don't agree with every single black person that's been pulled over, that they're going to get killed. I don't agree with it, but I'm sympathizing with them to saying maybe there obviously there's something to it because of, you know what I mean?
Why are they saying that? Have they been pulled over and disrespected the police and didn't listen to their orders?
I'm sure a lot of black people have had bad encounters with police officers. Everybody I've talked to, they've always had a bad encounter.
Okay, but was it always the cops just a total dick in this black person?
In some cases.
Okay.
In some cases, yeah.
Right. And
but that's accountable. That's accountable for the police officer, because the police officer, as like you said, racism does exist. That's why people need to. I think we need to acknowledge, as a United States of America of all races, we know we're still united, but there's still racism in every group.
Yeah,
so it's hard.
But here's what I want to say is I think, there's a problem in the black community too. There's this thug mentality that it's cool to be bad. It's cool to, disrespect whoever, and it's cool not to take care of your babies, and it's cool to do drugs, and the women, it's cool to dress like a whore. There's something in there too that needs to be fixed up, and I personally think the answer is Jesus.
Well, I agree with that, and I don't I have to disagree with you on that, because the majority of black people don't think that way. I think,
like I said, the media.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's some people,
like the rap music, how the girls are dressed and the black guys are thugs. That's what, I'm talking about, the culture, I guess, that the media tries to perpetrate on.
Exactly what it is.
I do not, I have a lot of black people as friends. Yeah, they're not like that. You're right. So I'm not saying it's a majority thing, but I think there's something that has captured some people in the black community where they think it's cool to be bad.
Yeah, it's no, that's, of course, that's it's the rogue, it's the going against the establishment, because they're taught, early on that, white people don't love you, white people don't like you, they're out to get you and all that. And but they have reason to believe that. But I think once they get out in the real world and they realize, that's what the whole point of dialoguing, connecting with people.
Yes.
Once they get, it's what's crazy. You can grow up in the inner city. Once they leave that environment and they come around other people of different backgrounds, there's just that connection. There is always that connection. They say, maybe I've been brainwashed. Same in the white community. There's tons of white racist people who think they're just out to be criminals. They're out to do this, that. Once they're around, because there's no communication between the two. You don't know. We don't talk. We don't say,
well, plus
I don't learn your story. You don't learn my story.
On the news, all we hear is, okay, another black man was killed by a white cop. We don't hear how a white man was killed by a white cop or even a black cop. So the narrative, even in our media, has been fueling this division in our country.
Me personally, if you see that on the news, another black man killed by a white cop, and if you're not investigating and looking into it and reading more into it, then you're you're thrown through a loop from the media. That's basically what they want you to believe. You know? Every single time this happens, I didn't know that. I didn't know that every time a white cop goes out
against black people.
But it's every time a black person goes out, they're trying to commit a crime. It's just ridiculous. The stereotypes on both ends.
Right. I agree.
Every white cop that goes out is just looking to kill somebody, and
Right.
every black person that leaves the house is looking to commit a crime. This is just ridiculous,
Yeah.
because there's that communication is not there. We don't have a lot of white officers going into inner cities and learning and listening to the people. There's a guy on YouTube, black guy, he did a interview with a bunch of cops, and he said, and they're being honest, they're having a heart to heart. This is what we feel. How do you feel? The cop asked him, do you guys really feel in fear when we're around? He said, yes, absolutely. So the cop has to say, okay, fine, white cop, okay, then maybe you guys are really telling the truth that you are in fear every time we're around. We have to take each other's statements to heart. And then he says, that's just how I've always felt like that. And he's like, man, I'm sorry you felt like that. I really do.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
asked the cop the other way around, what do you think? He's like, well, every time I come into your neighborhood, I have these looks of hate. I have these looks of, like, cops die at a higher rate.
Oh,
18.5% of, cops are shot and killed by, criminals. And so they want to go home to their families. They want to protect the
Yeah.
community. There is tons of cops out there who are racist. I get it. But the majority of cops are good, upstanding people that want to do good.
I don't know if there's tons. Where do you get those stats
Well,
from?
I meant to say, the small fraction, but there's a lot, but the majority of cops, I would say
Are
the
not.
majority of cops are good people of
Yeah.
all colors.
Of all.
It's just
I've met some cops where I thought this guy's a jerk.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of them are jerks.
Every cop I ran in, every white cop I ran into in Warren, the Warren police are horrible.
They're just, they can be real. I think they need a little training on how to speak to the public.
On
I'm
etiquette.
sorry.
And if they're serving the people, they should have a better respect for people. They obviously feel that they're higher than others. I'm law enforcement. You do what I say. But here's the thing, and I have to put this out there.
Okay.
Let me have my little train of thought. Okay. The laws aren't perfect. The laws are there to establish order. Order is a God-given thing. It is God ordained. Without law, we'd have chaos. The reason why we have laws is because when we do break those laws, we don't know the outcome. Many of these incidents, regardless of the racial background, the law has been broken, or the law has been compromised, or we're not obeying law enforcement. Cops aren't there. I'm well aware. I don't like cops. I'm gonna say it personally. I don't like cops. I respect them because they're there to enforce the law. That's their job. So when they stop me, I can't stand the cop. This guy's a jerk. I'm going to say, yes, officer, no, officer, and I'm going to abide by what he's saying and go about my day. I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there to try to win an argument. So they're there to, that's what they do. They're there to enforce the law. Let them enforce the law. Fight them in court. When you see injustice being done, what is the point of fighting a police officer, trying to take him down and try to take a weapon out of him? You're only doing harm to yourself. And then all of a sudden you're shot and killed. Happens to white people too.
Not only that,
what happens?
I think we need to take into consideration that every call a cop gets, he has no idea if it's going to turn deadly or if he's going to lose his leg. He don't know who you are. You could be some crazy white boy with a weapon.
Right, absolutely.
So they're constantly on high alert. To me, that'd be super stressful.
That's the main point. If you're following, you have to follow the rules. If you're not following the rules, the cops cannot determine what the outcome is going to be.
Right.
And sometimes it does result in death. So that's why we have laws to abide by them. I don't know why people don't just comply. Like, okay.
I have tried to, I've only been pulled over a couple times for speeding, but I've always tried to be, yes, sir. And, this and that, whatever. But I have never gone the extra mile. I never has said, thank you, sir, for, taking care of our city. Or I've never done that. Right. I'm sure that could help a cop too. So maybe we all need to respect each other a little more, the cops and us.
Yeah, I was at work, probably a couple months ago, and I saw a black officer and a white officer. They're getting something to eat. They're off duty. I walked up to them and I said, sorry, what's going on, guys? I thank you guys for your service. They both looked at me and said, thank you. We don't get that a lot. So there are people too. They know they're well aware of the stereotypes against them, what's going on. They're not
Yeah.
demons. They're here to enforce the
Right.
law. It's
And
just,
maybe some are though, because we've got evil people everywhere.
in my opinion, Derek Chauvin was one of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
think
don't
he,
agree with him.
yeah, I think
Do
him
I
being,
think he was evil? I don't know. Maybe
well,
he is. I
I
don't
do.
know.
I
Yeah,
do.
I don't think he needed to do what he did. I will say that. I don't,
Yeah.
you
That's
know.
enough. That's all I'll say. I think justice has been served. I don't really want to go into that, but
Yeah,
but
that's fine. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, I think we need to put some kind of a godly spin on this.
oh, I
because
have a yes. You mean a purpose to our message?
no, because people say, why was slavery okay in the Bible?
Oh, is that what you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, and then we could flip it to what God says the answer is.
Oh, here
Is
we
that
go.
cool?
There we go.
What? Why are you saying here we go?
It's always a touchy subject for everybody. But yeah, okay, let's
Yeah, it
address it.
is. Okay, so
Let's address it.
someone questioned online, why was slavery okay in the Bible? Well, that's a legitimate question.
Very.
Okay, so
Or better yet,
here's-
why did God condone it?
he didn't really see,
Right.
and let me
The
explain it.
misconception is
There was 3 ways people became slaves according to the Old Testament.
Mhm.
Okay, the first one was they were born to enslaved parents. Slaves who are parents have children, they're slaves too. Okay, got it. Next, they were purchased as slaves, and that's in Genesis 37:28. Or 3, they actually sold themselves into slavery to pay their debts. Okay, so we've got those 3 scenarios, right? Okay. So breaking into a home was punished by enslavement, Exodus 22:3. Prisoners of war were commonly enslaved, that was in Joel 3:6. And the children of Israel enslaved the Canaanites they conquered in the promised land, that's in Judges 1:28.
Okay.
That kind of slavery we've seen all through history. You conquer a land, you take the people as the slaves. Okay,
Prisoners.
so we get that, right?
Mhm.
So slaves in Israel were considered property to be bought and sold. That's in Exodus 21:32. However, they were granted protection against murder, permanent injury, or undue physical labor. Exodus 2, verse 20 and 26, and Exodus 23:12. Hebrew household slaves were included at religious meals, Exodus 12:44. So these kinds of privileges were not seen really in ancient history. Most slaves were treated horribly. Okay, these are how the slaves were treated in the Old Testament. Okay, but so why was this practice not condemned in the Old Testament? And this is, I forgot to write down the reference where I got this. Please forgive me. I usually try to do that. But anyway, this is what this guy said. In many ways, the Old Testament did condemn it.
Right.
There were several ways a Hebrew slave could be freed. One was an individual could be purchased and set free, Exodus 21:8. A slave permanently injured by his master was to be set free, Exodus 21:26. And Hebrews were to be held as slaves no longer than 6 years, Deuteronomy 15:12. Okay. Then the Jubilee year, which occurred every 49 years, was to free all Israelite slaves, Leviticus 25:50. These rules minimized the evils of slavery. It protected slaves from personal harm and provided for them their eventual freedom.
Okay.
So in other words, and here's how I have to look at it, Jess. I believe God's done all that he can do to show us how to live right. But it takes us humans a while to grasp things and go, oh, maybe this isn't right. Maybe we shouldn't have slaves. Maybe women should have an education, so it's not so much God puts a stamp of approval on it.
Right.
It takes mankind a while to go, oh, I think we're wrong here.
He's basically trying to bring the good out of what evil we've done.
Right. And this was just common practice in ancient history. Okay. So, and the main way that people were enslaved in Old Testament was during times of war. Then I found this very interesting. Okay. Many times people would sell themselves into slavery to improve their lives. And you think, what? What does that mean? Well, okay, now we're going to flip over to the New Testament when the Roman Empire was in power.
Okay.
And listen to this. Due to the growth and influence of Christianity, the acceptance of slavery began to change. See, there's the gospel working, right? However, the practice of slavery in the first century was quite different than the ancient practice of slavery we just talked about. Okay. You were not able to tell slaves from free people during this time in Rome. Many of these slaves were doctors, nurses, philosophers. I mean, they had powerful jobs, and not only that, their Roman masters paid for their education. I didn't know that either. Okay. All right. So it was common for people to sell themselves into slavery during this time to secure such privileges as to become a Roman citizen and later to be able to purchase their freedom. Okay. So again, when we say, okay, how come God didn't say this is wrong? Well, God tells us pretty much everything that's wrong. If you don't love your neighbor as yourself and you got as a person as a slave, you're not loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not rocket science. Right. Okay. But listen to this. The reason why, Paul and everyone, I lost you.
Sorry.
You okay?
Got the pot. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, so it's kind of like the household code that was popular during the Roman time too. The man possessed the woman, his wife, and the children obeyed the parents. Okay, we got all that. Because in Rome and in ancient history, women were the property of men. So that household code was still very much part of Roman culture that Paul was living in. So here's the total dependence of the Roman economy upon the labor of slaves made it impossible for the ancient world to even to conceive of abolishing this. So they actually treated their slaves good, but their slaves were used to build up the economy. We already said they were doctors and nurses. So maybe slaves isn't a good term. Maybe they were servants, because that's how I think
more
God
like
looked
servitude.
at. Yeah. Okay. So interesting, right? So as a result, no New Testament writer attempted to end slavery itself, as this was not possible in their time. But, right? New Testament isn't silent on slavery. What did Paul say? Paul abolished all racial and social discrimination for Christians. Galatians 3:26-28. There's neither Greek nor Jew, free or slave, right? So Paul's saying right there, we're equal. This is wrong. I think sometimes people think they have to pick up the Bible and read specifically. And God said slavery was wrong. You know what I mean?
And can I make a note? For the viewers, we don't see the European colonizers as Christians. I don't.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the colonizers during this country. I don't call them Christians.
Our founding fathers, you're talking about?
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that another time.
That's a different issue.
But anyway, so free Christians were to view slaves as their equal. That's in Philemon. Is it Philemon?
Philemon, I call him filet mignon.
Philemon 16, verse 16. Okay. So not a single New Testament leader in the Bible owned a slave. Right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of a little brief history of slavery. Nowhere will you find that God says slavery is okay. It's kind of like, God told Solomon and David, you should only have one wife. Did they obey it? No. Solomon had 300 wives, 700 concubines. Well, we know how that turned out. So just because something happens in the Bible or it's accepted by people does not mean it has God's stamp of approval on it.
Yes.
That's what I think people don't get. Well, God said slavery is okay. Well, where did he say that?
It's obviously taken out of context. That's not what it's talking about,
Right. So this is what I believe the answer to slavery and racial racism going on in our country is this. Every person is created in the image of God. God made man. Let us make man in our likeness. Genesis 1:26-27. So if you're a human being, you've been made in the image of God, whether you're white, Black, Hispanic, Chinese, Indian, whatever. So
Mhm.
we need to get that straight.
Mhm.
White man's not the devil, black man's not the devil. We are
Mhm.
all children from God,
Right.
right? Okay, so we've got that, right?
Mhm.
Now, it's interesting because for Paul to say in Galatians 3:28 that there's neither Jew nor Gentile was a big slap in the face to the Jews, because they wouldn't even look at a Gentile in public.
Yeah.
They were the scum of the
They
earth.
were
And now
superior.
Paul's bringing this radical message of, yeah, I know these Gentiles put you through captivity in Babylon and
Mhm.
Egypt and did all these things, but now in Christ, that's your brother.
Right.
So
Mhm.
the Bible has some radical messages, and I don't think a lot of our viewers understand that. For Paul to even say that
Mhm.
was like, what? What did he say?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
So anyway, that I thought that was pretty cool. So but God loves everyone.
Mhm.
And all we have to do is come to him, acknowledge, hey, I'm a sinner. The Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Come to
Mhm.
God. And the Bible says that in 1 Timothy 2:4, God desires that all people are to be saved and come to the knowledge of him.
Right.
All people. Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter what you've done. All people. Okay. Now, this is what the root of racism, I believe, is.
Mhm.
It's anger, hate, and hostility.
Right.
We've got so much anger and hate in our country. It's disgusting. And it's coming from both races. It's coming from our government.
Mhm.
It's coming now from our schools with their critical sin theory they want to teach.
Critical race theory. We're
Yeah.
we're critical sin theory.
Well, I think that's critical sin theory
Critical
too.
sin theory. Yes, indeed.
But so this is the scripture I want to leave with our viewers.
Okay.
He himself is our peace, who has made us both one, black, white, Jew, and Gentile,
Mhm.
and has broken down in his flesh the divisive wall of hostility.
Mhm.
That is what we need.
We need forgiveness. We need repentance.
We need to stop hating. We got to stop this hate.
And
And like you said, we got a dialogue. We have to have a healthy conversation. That's where change begins.
Mhm.
It's not, let me just point fingers at you and tell you how wrong and evil you are.
Mhm.
That's going to put people on the defensive.
Things do need to change. Both, behaviorally, maybe some reform in some way or another, but it ultimately is us knowing that we are sinners coming to the cross.
Right.
Once we're under the cross, it makes way more sense. Life makes more sense. You have brothers in Christ, sisters in Christ. You do not care about the background, because you realize you've had this divine intervention with God, and you realize now you are a child of God, and you're not sentenced to wrath because of your transgressions. Can I read something? I love gotquestions.com, but I love this little paragraph they have. Racism in varying forms and various degrees has been a plague on humanity for thousands of years. Brothers and sisters of all ethnicities, this should not be. Victims of racism, prejudice, and discrimination need to forgive. Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you.
Yes.
Declares, racists may not deserve your forgiveness, but we deserve God's forgiveness far less. Those who practice racism, prejudice, and discrimination need to repent. Present yourself to God as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. Romans 6:13. Do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but present yourself to God as those who have been brought from death to life.
Yes.
Galatians 3:28. You read it. That's my,
Yeah.
those are my people. When everybody asks, who are your people? I've had someone ask me that before, probably like a year ago. Who are your people? I said, it was very, very nice, because she's younger, and she asked me, so who are your people? I said, my people are Galatians 3:28. So she pulled out her phone and looked it up. She says, wow, okay, I didn't know what that meant. Those are my people. I don't care who you are. If you're in Christ, you are my people.
I mean, I've had people that I've gotten to know, fellow believers in Christ, that are closer to me than some family. I consider them my true family, some people. And to expound on what you're talking about, just to forgive, we need to forgive.
Mhm.
I believe that, but I also do believe we absolutely should be speaking up against any kind of protest. I'm for protests, peaceful ones.
Mhm.
I am all for speaking up against evil. So I will never discredit anyone for trying to address that. I think Colin Kaepernick, in his own way, was trying to address something that he saw as
Sure.
evil. I
Sure.
don't necessarily agree where he did it or
Mhm.
who he was trying to defend,
Right.
but
Mhm.
we've already explained, yeah, police brutality does happen.
Mhm.
You know, that is true, right?
Yeah.
But and I have to ask Colin this, and any other person who's involved with Black Lives Matter, if all Black Lives Matter, why don't they protest Planned Parenthood that has a rate of aborting more Black babies than white babies? Don't those Black
Mhm.
Lives Matter?
It's very, very true. Yeah, it's sin. That's what keeps us away from actually being accountable to certain things. We don't want to talk about certain
Right,
things because it's
right. Yeah,
well, we'll talk
yeah.
about it's this victim mentality in the last couple of years. Ever since that,
Yes.
it's this whole mentality. Where are you? I think you're discriminated in one way or another, and then you say, "No, I'm not a victim." Yeah, yeah. Well, you are. Let's find out where you are. So, did you have both parents? Are you
Mm.
gay? Are you oppressed? Okay, there. See, there, you're a victim. Now you're a victim. Oh, okay, I guess I'm a victim. That's the whole mentality that they want people to think. Because then once you're a victim, you can't think for yourself. You have to join some kind of movement, some kind of following, and just be, I'm part of that because we've been oppressed. And then now Asians say they're being attacked every day by people who are racist towards Asians.
And they
It's
try to
just
blame that on Trump because he called the COVID-19 the Chinese virus, but the Spanish flu, I didn't hear anyone protesting that being called the Spanish flu.
I know, and
It's
maybe we can
retarded.
do an episode on Trump. For one person to love his country, um, he loves his country to say he's a racist, to say he's this tyrant that hates minorities is just the most outlandish thing you can't back
Of
that up. I
course.
would love for someone to
Yeah.
back that up.
Yeah.
Um,
And I am a staunch Trump supporter. I love that man. Now,
mhm,
when I saw him on The Apprentice years ago, I thought he was an idiot. I'm like, this guy's a jerk. I couldn't
mhm.
stand him. But he became president and he started being tough on some of our enemies and tough on different things. I'm like, I love him. I don't agree with everything he said,
Of course not.
and
And
maybe
I don't think he's a
everything.
born again Christian. I don't think he's all righteous and everything, but I think he has
Yeah,
his
I'm hoping
morals
he
line
comes to
up.
that point.
He lines up with where I would view. Okay. Yeah, I don't think, and people, this is the whole argument. We're all living on stolen land. We don't live 200 years. This isn't 200 years ago. We have to have some kind of set rules of the people that are here. Everybody's not from here. The Native Americans are not originally from the United States.
Mhm.
People, they act like he hates Mexican people because they're Mexican. Mexico's right below the United States. If it was Russians trying to flood into our country, I would support and
Right.
say we need to keep Russians out. If it
Thank
was
you.
Africans who are taking the boat illegally
But
coming in, I would be against that.
but today it's perfectly acceptable to be racist against white people. Why is that okay? That's
I mean,
perfectly acceptable.
this is the thing. It's okay to speak up. If there's any white viewers out there feel like they're being attacked, it's okay to be white and have an opinion. You're not a racist. You're not
Absolutely.
automatically a racist.
No,
That's ridiculous.
it is
You
ridiculous.
can critically think, but okay, as a white race, do be I'm saying be cautious or whatever, but know who you're talking to. Okay, there's a history behind them. I get it. Let me. This is how I talk to people. That aren't white. I say I let them speak. I let them share me their point of view. This is how I feel. Trump is racist. Okay, I say
Mhm.
I'm sorry to feel that way. Instead of me going out with all the facts and say that I'm gonna refute you. It's like we said in the last video. It's not about winning the argument. It's about winning the person and saying, look, think logically
Yeah.
about this. Is it really about race? Is it always about race? Is it
But
has to
I
be?
think it's okay to correct people too and go, oh, I bet you heard that on the news, because here
Right.
we were being told, look, Trump hates Mexicans because he said they're coming over our border illegally. But today you can flat out call white people names and say
Mm-hmm.
the greatest threat in our country is white supremacy. What?
Right.
What?
Well,
You know?
like I said yesterday, I'm the number one problem. The straight white male is the number one enemy of, I think anybody that's ever met me,
Yeah,
talked to
you're
me,
pretty evil. I'm pretty,
anybody's talked to me, had a dialogue with me, I think I'm pretty open-minded. I can
of
make
course
the-
you are. You're very respectful. And I think that's the bottom line, Jess, is our country has just lost the fear of God. We think we can treat each other
Mhm.
however. We think we can lie and start trouble and burn down. Where's the fear of God in this country? People don't realize God is watching all this.
And this
And
is
you really think he's going to be silent forever? I don't think so.
and to fuel this fire, this is the fueling fire, and I hate to say it, but this is the one thing I stand on. It's the vulnerability of making whites, you're disarming them of their moral authority by calling them a race. This is just so illogical of an argument.
Mhm.
And it's just, you're just negating the fact that this person, regardless of who they are, can think for themselves, ask critical questions, and say, yeah, maybe it's not just about race. Maybe let's look at the facts. Let's say this. Oh, well, you're racist. Well, you're disarming people to say,
Yeah.
that's just an easy cop out to say it's always a race thing. It's got to be a race thing,
Right. It's like they want to attack the character of someone that disagrees instead of listening.
Yeah, they're disregarding the character and using only skin tone. But-
Or political affiliation. Now, Trump supporters or people that use the term patriots are enemies of the state. It's like, really? We're the ones that really care about this country.
Mhm.
What are you talking about?
Intimate moment. Anybody who's watching this, intimate moment. Come here. This is a fact, in my opinion. A fact and opinion. I think people of color and white and Mexican and brown have been closer than they've ever been. That's a point I will argue. I think we've been close together in relationship, built bonds, relationships, friendships. Me and my wife, perfect example. We still get the flack for it because we have from the white side, from the black side. What are they doing together?
That's so stupid.
It's the stupidest thing. We love each other. Regardless.
Right.
Sometimes I'll catch it and I'll see like it could either be a lot from black men, white women. They'll give me that look. I'll turn around. Dear, what were they looking at? She's like, looked at me. You know what they're looking at? Oh yeah, I forgot. We've been together for 12 years now, so we're just kind of we forget about the whole.
There's something wrong with this couple
because it's such a taboo thing. How interracial couples? Wow, it's just so. How aren't we at war? Aren't we enemies? It's just complete nonsense.
And think about like 9/11 or when we have some kind of catastrophe.
Yeah, it has to be that.
I always see people trying to come together. I pray to God it doesn't take another catastrophe to bring us together. But so I agree with your point that we try to be more united than our government wants us to be. I can't stand that man sitting in the office.
No.
I'm sorry, Lord, but that brother needs to go.
And the sad part is I really feel sorry for people who think he's doing a good job as a president. I'm sorry. That's just so sad. Oh, he's doing a good job. That's probably the
most ignorant thing I have ever heard. Look at gas prices, food shortage. How are all these grids just mysteriously being hacked into?
Just let him talk.
How is that happening?
Let him talk. Listen to him talk.
Well, not only that, his son and he are guilty of taking money from our enemies. Yeah. Oh my Lord Jesus. And then, the whole voting thing, these fake audits. What are they trying to prove? We're trying to prove that you stole this election. What? That's misinformation. Actually, it's coming out. And I encourage our viewers to look besides mainstream news and find some alternate sources that are reporting some things. They're very disturbing. Over 424,000 votes in Pennsylvania can't be accounted for. They flipped from Trump to Biden. In Georgia, there's a mess.
That's a whole new
Arizona,
video.
It's happening. Now, I don't even want to believe my country is doing this crap. To me, it is shocking. It's shocking that they hated Trump so much. Why do people hate Trump so much that are, the high officials in our government?
Mhm.
Yeah, we should have a show on it.
On Trump. I think we should have a Trump episode. Just put
Let's
Trump on it.
put that impersonator on, dude. He's freaking hilarious.
So my message is that my overall message, sin is in the world.
Yep.
There's evil. Racism is not of God. Sorry
it's
if you've
not.
been a victim of racism. I'm sorry. People, I know my people, not my people, my race, my Galatians 3:28 loves you.
That's
I
right.
and I love you back. Jesus loves you. So, keep up the good faith. It's just a wicked world we live in.
And what I want to leave with our viewers is let's work on being more united.
Mhm.
Let's not allow Joe Biden or anyone else, Black Lives Matter, Antifa,
Mhm.
divide us anymore. Let's not give them the time of day.
Amen. Yes, that was a touchy subject, but I'm glad we touched on it because it's something that's going on. It's on everybody's mind right now, and everybody wants to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Give you some biblical truths, read your Bible, do what it says. So, all right. Well, God bless. Have a good one.
God bless.